And they kept saying, "Excuse our homely ways." What should they take anything for? They were entertaining you, to be sure. Do you suppose they keep vodka for sale? Said the soldier, succeeding at last in pulling the soaked boot off the blackened stocking. In spite of the dirtiness of the hut, which was all muddied by their boots and the filthy dogs licking themselves clean, and the smell of marsh mud and powder that filled the room, and the absence of knives and forks, the party drank their tea and ate their supper with a relish only known to sportsmen. Washed and clean, they went into a hay barn swept ready for them, where the coachman had been making up beds for the gentlemen. Though it was dusk, not one of them wanted to go to sleep. After wavering among reminiscences and anecdotes of guns, of dogs, and of former shooting parties, the conversation rested on a topic that interested all of them. After Visenka had several times over expressed his appreciation of this delightful sleeping place among the fragrant hay, this delightful broken cart, he supposed it to be broken because the shafts had been taken out, of the good nature of the peasants that had treated him to vodka, of the dogs who lay at the feet of their respective masters, Oblonsky began telling them of a delightful shooting party at Malthus's, where he had stayed the previous summer. Malthus was a well-known capitalist, who had made his money by speculation in railway shares. Stepan Arkadyevitch described what grouse moors this Malthus had bought in the Tver province, and how they were preserved, and of the carriages and dog-carts in which the shooting party had been driven, and the luncheon pavilion that had been rigged up at the marsh. "I don't understand you," said Levin, sitting up in the hay. "How is it such people don't disgust you?" "I can understand a lunch with Lafitte is all very pleasant, but don't you dislike just that very sumptuousness?" "All these people, just like our spirit monopolists in old days, get their money in a way that gains them the contempt of everyone. They don't care for their contempt, and then they use their dishonest gains to buy off the contempt they have deserved." "Perfectly true," chimed in Visenka Veslovsky. "Perfectly." "Oblonsky, of course, goes out of _bonhomie_, but other people say." "Well, Oblonsky stays with them." "Not a bit of it." Levin could hear that Oblonsky was smiling as he spoke. I simply don't consider him more dishonest than any other wealthy merchant or nobleman. They've all made their money alike by their work and their intelligence. Oh, by what work? Do you call it work to get hold of concessions and speculate with them? Of course it's work. Work in this sense, that if it were not for him and others like him, there would have been no railways. But that's not work, like the work of a peasant or a learned profession. Granted, but it's work in the sense that his activity produces a result, the railways. But of course you think the railways useless. No, that's another question. I am prepared to admit that they're useful. But all profit that is out of proportion to the labor expended is dishonest. But who is to define what is proportionate? Making profit by dishonest means, by trickery, said Levin, conscious that he could not draw a distinct line between honesty and dishonesty. Such as banking, for instance, he went on. It's an evil, the amassing of huge fortunes without labor, just the same thing as with the spirit monopolies, it's only the form that's changed. Underscore la ROI mort, vive la ROI underscore. No sooner were the spirit monopolies abolished than the railways came up, and banking companies. That, too, is profit without work. Yes, that may all be very true and clever. Lie down, Croc. Stepan Arkadyevitch called to his dog, who was scratching and turning over all the hay. He was obviously convinced of the correctness of his position, and so talked serenely and without haste. But you have not drawn the line between honest and dishonest work. That I receive a bigger salary than my chief clerk, though he knows more about the work than I do, that's dishonest, I suppose? I can't say. Well, but I can tell you, you're receiving some 5,000, let's say, for your work on the land, while our host, the peasant here, however hard he works, can never get more than 50 rubles, is just as dishonest as my earning more than my chief clerk, and Malthus getting more than a station master. No, quite the contrary. I see that society takes up a sort of antagonistic attitude to these people, which is utterly baseless, and I fancy there's envy at the bottom of it. No, that's unfair, said Veslovsky. How could envy come in? There is something not nice about that sort of business. You say, Levin went on, that it's unjust for me to receive 5,000, while the peasant has 50, that's true. It is unfair, and I feel it, but it really is. Why is it we spend our time writing, drinking, shooting, doing nothing, while they are forever at work? Said Vasenka Veslovsky, obviously for the first time in his life reflecting on the question, and consequently considering it with perfect sincerity. Yes, you feel it, but you don't give him your property, said Stepan Arkadyevitch, intentionally, as it seemed, provoking Levin. There had arisen of late something like a secret antagonism between the two brothers-in-law, as though, since they had married sisters, a kind of rivalry had sprung up between them as to which was ordering his life best, and now this hostility showed itself in the conversation, as it began to take a personal note. I don't give it away, because no one demands that from me, and if I wanted to, I could not give it away, answered Levin, and have no one to give it to. Give it to this peasant, he would not refuse it. Yes, but how am I to give it up? Am I to go to him and make a deed of conveyance? I don't know, but if you are convinced that you have no right. I'm not at all convinced. On the contrary, I feel I have no right to give it up, that I have duties both to the land and to my family. No, excuse me, but if you consider this inequality as unjust, why is it you don't act accordingly? Well, I do act negatively on that idea, so far as not trying to increase the difference of position existing between him and me. No, excuse me, that's a paradox. Yes, there's something of a sophistry about that, Veslovsky agreed. Ah! Our host, so you're not asleep yet? He said to the peasant who came into the barn, opening the creaking door. How is it you're not asleep? No, how's one to sleep? I thought our gentlemen would be asleep, but I heard them chattering. I want to get a hook from here. She won't bite? He added, stepping cautiously with his bare feet. And where are you going to sleep?